morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the e-training program on energy efficiency in buildings in Zambia and Mauritius. Thank you for being with us again today as we continue exploring the practical strategies to advance energy efficiency in the built environment. As mentioned yesterday, the training has been developed by the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre in collaboration with the Ministry of Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, MIHUD, and the National Council for Construction, NCC, both in Zambia, as well as the Energy Efficiency Management Office, EMO, in Mauritius. I am Clara Camarasa, Senior Advisor at UNEP Copenhagen Climate Centre, and I will be your instructor in today's session. Yesterday, we laid the ground on why energy efficiency matters, and today we will go a step further. We will be looking at the policies that drive real change on the ground. Now let's have a brief moment to recap day 1. We explored both the global and the local trends in building energy efficiency. We saw that the energy efficiency plays a vital role in reducing emissions and improving comfort in Zambia and Mauritius, while also delivering economic, environmental, and social benefits. Key strategies include design upgrades, integration of renewables, and use of tools like IFC Edge through local challenges, such as financing gaps and limited awareness really persist, and we really need to make sure we overcome those. Here's what we've planned for today. Session 1 will set the scene. We'll dive into the key policy tools, regulation, incentives, and information instruments that promote energy efficiency in buildings. My colleague Julia will then present the synergies between nature-based solutions and energy efficiency to enhance sustainability outcomes. This will be followed by a case study where Hubert Zahn from the Government of Ghana will share insights on Ghana's energy efficiency policies in the building sector. In session 2, government representatives from Energy Efficiency Management Office, or EMO, in Mauritius, and National Council for Construction, NCC, in Zambia, will provide perspectives on the national energy efficiency policies and building regulations, including key challenges, achievements, and strategies for progress. This session will run for around 45 minutes. Session 3 will be a 20-minute panel discussion featuring representatives from Energy Efficiency Management Office, Ministry of Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, NCC, and the Government of Ghana. In this panel, we will explore the roles of policymakers, architects, and engineers, as well as other stakeholders, and discuss the challenges and opportunities in the building and construction sectors, both in Zambia and in Mauritius. And finally, we will wrap up day 2 with a short quiz to reflect on the key takeaways. Now, looking at the key learning outcomes of day 2. By the end of the day, you'll have a clear understanding of how different policy instruments support energy efficiency in buildings. You'll gain insights from regional experiences and explore the link between energy efficiency and nature-based solutions, as well as learn from country experiences in Zambia and Mauritius, as well as Ghana, on policy instruments and implementation, as well as regulation. We also aim to highlight how collaboration across different actors can really drive impact on the ground. And last but not least, we'll identify roles and opportunities for a multi-stakeholder collaboration in the building sector. Today's session will be guided by a diverse panel of experts with deep experience in energy efficiency policy and sustainable buildings, with particular focus in the sub-Saharan Africa region. We're excited to learn from the insights and practical perspectives, and to set the scene, it'll be myself as the instructor of the session. Joining me, my dear colleague Julia Rocha Romero, Nature-Based Solution Advisors at UNEP CCC, and we are also pleased to be joined by Hubert Zahn, Senior Enforcement Officer in the Government of Ghana. We will also have the pleasure of hearing from the following speakers. First, Siyat Tifoni, Senior Engineer at the Energy Efficiency Management Office, or EMO, in Mauritius, who you saw yesterday and today brings another valuable experience from the technical expertise and practical experience in implementing energy efficiency measures. Also, you will hear from Jahad Kalihum, Director of EMO, who leads the agency's national strategies and policy development for energy efficiency. From the Zambia side, you will hear from Ernst Zulu, Inspector at the National Council for Construction, NCC, who will share insights on building regulation enforcement, as well as progress in the country's energy efficiency agenda in Zambia. And surely, last but not least, we will have Mr. Oliver Zulu, Senior Architectural Advisor at the Ministry of Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development in Zambia, who will share Zambia's experience during the panel discussion. We are indeed very pleased to have such a strong panel of experts with us, and we look forward to their contributions. And without further ado, let's start with our first session, Setting the Scene. Policy instruments for building energy efficiency, regulation, information, and incentives. Very briefly, since we touched upon this yesterday, I just wanted to make a quick recap on why energy efficiency is so important in buildings. Buildings account for around 36% of global CO2 emissions, making them one of the largest contributors to climate change. A key reason is that most energy used in buildings still comes from fossil fuel-based sources, directly linking energy consumption to carbon emissions. Moreover, a building with a low energy performance can consume 4 to 5 times more energy than an efficient one. And this leads not only to higher operational costs, but also to a significant increase in emission. And this trend holds true also in Africa and the sub-Saharan Africa region, where the building sector is growing rapidly to the urbanization and population growth. In fact, over 70% of buildings that will exist in Africa by 2040 have yet to be built, presenting a major opportunity to shape the low carbon efficient infrastructure from the outset. So what's the solution? The solution is decarbonizing buildings and improving their energy performance through policies, incentives, and smart design, which are essential to achieving climate and development goals. And it's together all of these facts that really showcase us how important it is to ensure energy efficiency in buildings and put it at the top of the climate action agenda, particularly in regions poised to large-scale construction and urban expansion, as is the case of Africa. But why do we need energy efficiency policies in buildings? One of the key reasons is to bridge what's known as the efficiency gap. This gap arises when stakeholders such as designers, developers, and building owners fail to adopt available energy efficient solutions, often because their interests are misaligned. The construction sector is especially fragmented, with each actor pursuing their own objectives, be it financial, technical, or operational. But this often doesn't align with the long-term efficiency or climate goals. And this is why and where efficiency policies play a critical role. They help overcome these barriers that prevent stakeholders from delivering these energy efficient buildings. Some of these barriers include market barriers, such as lack of available energy efficient products or services, financial barriers, such as high upfront costs or limited access to finance, technical barriers, such as limited ability and availability and awareness of proven solution, awareness barriers, of course, stakeholders might not have the information they need to make informed decisions, and last but not least, institutional barriers, conflicting mandates or procurement rules that really prioritize the lowest cost over life cycle performance. Now, to address these, energy efficiency policies such as building codes, performance standards, awareness campaigns, incentive programs, utility obligations, and capacity buildings, among others, as we will see later on, can provide the structure and support needed to really bridge this gap. Now, this slides illustrates the market transformation package, a framework for how enabling policies can really help shift the markets towards a greater energy efficiency and innovation. We see three main types of policy tools here, often referred to as sticks, which is the regulation on the left, regulation instruments such as building codes, minimum energy performance standards or MEPS, and disclosure requirements, which push the market by setting a minimum performance threshold and by eliminating inefficient products, shown here by the market push line that is moving us past the illegal zone. Next, we have tambourines in the middle. These refer to the information instruments like energy labels, awareness campaigns, and capacity building. They help raise awareness, support better decision-making, and encourage voluntary shifts towards efficiency, supporting thereby a market lift and early adopters. And last but not least, the carrots, the incentives on the right. These are both financial, such as rebates or loans, and non-financial. And these help to pull the market towards the more encouraging of, or further encouraging of, in the adoption of more advanced innovative solutions. Together, these instruments form a comprehensive policy package that can push the worst performing products out of the market and support consumer awareness and reward as well innovation. The goal is to shift the entire market curve to the right, moving from illegal and minimum performance towards high efficient and innovative solutions. In this way, the IEA Energy Efficiency Policy Package is a set of policy instruments that include three fundamental pillars: regulation, information, and incentives in all sectors, including buildings, where we see there have the greatest gains, where we see that the greatest gains are also obtained through this package of policies of energy efficiency. And to establish a package of efficient measures, the first step is to define the objectives that you want to achieve with the building sector. When it comes to regulation, or what we previously referred to as STICs, we typically see two main types: mandatory standards and obligation. Building codes, such as technical codes for construction, set clear requirements for energy efficiency and sustainability in buildings. A strong regional example is the Kenya National Building Code, which includes energy efficiency standards for new construction. Similarly, the South Africa SANS 10400 XA standard mandates energy performance requirement for buildings, making it a benchmark in the region. On the product side, there's also minimum energy performance standards, or MEPS, that regulate energy efficiency of appliances and equipment, as we will see also in the presentation of Hubert. And for instance, we also know of the ECOWAS countries that have adopted regional MEPS and labeling programs for appliances like refrigerators and air conditioners. On the other side, mandatory disclosure policies are other regulatory tools. For example, South Africa's energy performance standards, certificates or APC regulation, which require large public buildings to disclose their energy use, promoting thereby transparency and accountability. In addition to mandatory standards, we must also consider utility obligation mechanisms that really require to invest in energy efficiency. A standout example of this is South Africa's Energy Efficiency Demand Management Program, which provides funding for municipalities to implement energy-saving projects. And finally, there is green public procurement, rules that guide government entities to purchase products and services that meet specific criteria, such as energy efficiency or certification standards. Countries like Rwanda and Ghana have already started incorporating these energy efficiency into their public procurement policies, thereby ensuring government instruments align with their overarching climate goals. Now, these are just some examples of the sub-Saharan Africa region that really illustrate how regulation can transform markets, drive sustainability practices, and drive support the widespread adoption of these energy efficient solutions in the building sector. Now, building energy codes and standards are among the most recognized, scalable, and cost-effective policy instruments for improving energy performance in buildings. As we can see by this IEA analysis, as of 2023, building energy codes and standards have been implemented in more than 80 countries, around 70, covering both residential and non-residential sectors. However, if current trends continue, an estimated of 10 billion square meters of forest space, more than the entire current build area of Nigeria and South Africa combined, will remain uncovered by mandatory building energy codes. The good news is that many African countries are now actively exploring or updating energy codes through progress in implementation. And it is great progress we're seeing, but the implementation has been uneven so far. And in places where building codes already exist, such as South Africa and Kenya's updated National Building Code, it is essential that these standards continue to evolve, keeping pace with innovation in building practices, materials, and technologies. As for the pillar of information policies, or what we've been calling tambourines, education, transparency, and communication are essential for promoting energy efficiency and building a culture of sustainability. These tools fall under three categories: data and information, awareness, and capacity building. Data and information have, for example, energy performance certificates, or APC, which can provide energy ratings and basic building information. A great example is the one we mentioned on South Africa, EPC regulation, which mandates energy disclosure for large buildings. We also have building passports, which are comprehensive records of buildings materials, energy systems, upgrades, and energy use. Still emerging in Africa, with digital platforms being piloted under initiatives such as the African Energy Commission. The other aspect is awareness raising in many occasions. Labels and marks are simple, visible tags helping consumers choose efficient products. An example is the ECOWAS regional energy efficiency label for appliances in West Africa. And next, the next pillar within the information package would be capacity building. Education and training. This is technical training for builders, engineers, policymakers, and any stakeholder involved in the building value chain. A great example of this is Ghana's Energy Commission training workshops for energy managers that Hubert will also describe. And we also have labor certifications, which are formal recognition of professional energy efficiency skills. A great, outstanding example of this is Rwanda's Green Building Professional Certification, developed under the Rwanda Green Building Minimum Compliance System. And as I was saying, energy performance certificates, or EPCs, provide a crucial information to consumers about the energy efficiency of buildings they plan to buy or rent. They include both an energy rating and an energy efficiency rating and recommendations for cost-effective improvements. On the slides, you can see an example from South Africa, where the EPC rates buildings on a scale from A, most efficient, to G, least efficient. This system is central. It's a central part of the government's efforts to enhance energy performance in the built environment. For EPC to be truly effective, it is essential that they include all relevant data, that the information is easily understood by users, and that the ratings are comparable across the building types and regions. Last but not least, we have incentives, as we've been calling them carrots. Incentives play a crucial role in accelerating large-scale adoption of energy efficiency measures. They can be classified in two main types, financial and non-financial. Looking at the non-financial incentives, this can be time-based. For example, fast-tracking permit approvals for energy efficiency buildings. They can also be scope-based, allowing increased building height, floor area, or density for developments that really meet higher energy efficiency standards. These mechanisms are being explored and piloted in urban planning reforms in countries like Rwanda and Ghana at the moment. And when it comes to financial incentives, we can find financial mechanisms which support private investment through tools such as loan guarantees, concessional loans, or access to climate funds. An example of this is the Green Climate Fund supported by the Renewable Energy and Efficiency Project in Burkina Faso, which includes guarantees and concessional finance. We can also find direct financial support, such as incentives for efficiency with grants, rebates, tax credits, or utility bill discounts. A great example of this is Kenya's Last Mile Connectivity Project, which includes subsidies that improve energy access and reduce upfront costs for efficiency appliances in households. So to wrap up, accelerating energy efficiency in buildings isn't just a technical necessity, it's a strategic opportunity to reduce emissions, cut costs, and create more resilient, comfortable, and sustainable communities across Africa and beyond. And efficiency policy instruments are key to achieve this. And with this key message, I hand over to Julia Rocha Romero, Nature-Based Solution Advisor at UNEP Climate Centre, to tell us more about the synergies between nature-based solutions and energy efficiency for enhanced and wider sustainability outcomes. Thank you. Julia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Clara. What a great presentation to set us off. I'm just going to share my screen, so bear with me, colleagues. I'm really excited to be with you today, and also especially as we are joining colleagues from EMO, NCC, and also our dear colleague, Mr. Zulu from MIHUD in Zambia. This topic is very much near and dear to me, and as a nature-based solutions advisor at UNEP CCC, I hope to share some or build on what Clara just presented on the opportunities that we have for turning buildings into a more pleasant space for once, but also more efficient, and the positive impact that this can have on cities that are growing so fast and are projected to continue growing in the future. I understand that yesterday you were joined by my colleague Talat Munshi from UNEP CCC, who also discussed nature-based solutions. So I will not dive too much into what it means, but I included this slide for you just for a quick refresh. So the definition adopted at UNEA, at the United Nations Environment Assembly in 2022, basically states that nature-based solutions are actions to protect, conserve, restore, sustainably use, and manage natural environments, and also modified terrestrial, fresh water, coastal, different types of ecosystems. This means on a building level, which is what we're discussing today, is that nature-based solutions can really have a tangible impact and be combined with other energy efficiency instruments, as Clara presented, to bring thermal comfort, promote energy savings, decrease urban heat island effect when applied at scale, also support decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. And then you have all the other, what we call co-benefits or value added on nature-based solutions that go beyond energy efficiency, which, for example, is the gain of biodiversity. You can also increase human well-being. This is thoroughly documented in scientific literature, and then also can be used as a strategy for growing food inside cities. I have an image here that I think it speaks for itself, and colleagues from Mauritius are very much familiar with this, and we're looking forward to being with you there next week. But basically, this is a heat island map of Port Louis in Mauritius, where you can really have an understanding of how hot the city gets and the high index in terms of thermal comfort. This area that's very red on the map, it's the area where it's downtown and where most buildings are concentrated. Well, now you can see the map I was referring to, which I'm glad. So basically, yes. So if you have an understanding of this thermal index maps that measure land surface temperatures, you can see how the situation is looking in Port Louis. And this is basically from December 2024 to March 2025. So very fresh picture painted on the situation. And this just highlights the need for designing building infrastructure that can withstand that type of heat, not just now, but projected in Mauritius as we proceed, or in the next many decades. The issue with when we're talking about nature-based solutions is that there are several barriers at hand. And as Clara mentioned in her presentation when she set us off, we understand that there's what we call a policy package for addressing these barriers. And we have a publication that I will link later on that highlights and goes very much deep into each of these barriers. So we have the capacity barriers, regulatory and policy barriers, which is what I will be discussing predominantly today, and then the financial barriers. This is also connected to the regulation, information, and incentives that Clara presented, and so like the carrots and sticks and tambourines. So you will see that this typology is very much aligned. On the regulatory and policy barriers, it's very difficult for practitioners to exploit the nature-based solution synergies across policy domains. Because even though nature-based solutions can be very much piggybacked or benefited from energy efficiency building standards and also for urban planning strategies, cooling plans, etc., the lack of awareness, lack of understanding of how this can actually be achieved on the ground is a huge barrier for policymakers. You can't really plan a policy for something that you don't understand and that you don't know how to measure, and you don't know the impacts that this will have in the future. A caveat to this, and this is just a small point, is that the term nature-based solutions can sometimes be misleading for practitioners too, because in the terminology itself, you call it a solution, and that may give the impression that, well, it's problem solved. Once you have a green roof or a green facade, the building will be cooler, and your troubles end there. But that's not exactly the case. Nature is, of course, a living organism that we need to revisit, and is very much impacted by climate change itself. So it's a solution that you have to constantly work with. So that was just a small caveat for us here. The other key barrier on a policy and regulation area is that often there's a huge lack of coordination between local level policy, national level policy when we're looking into nature-based solutions. So different jurisdictions that have the mandate, municipalities and regions, and all of this coordination that can sometimes be very challenging. And of course hinders how policymakers will implement nature-based solutions and who ultimately has the overview. In our projects in Zambia and Mauritius, we're also working very closely with national and local stakeholders to facilitate the process on implementation of nature-based solutions. So this is just to underscore that it can very much be done, and I have some examples coming up. As colleagues know, and I think you know this a lot more closely than I do, policy work is absolutely not a straightforward process. It's a journey, and it can have one step back, 2 steps forward, and it can also be very much impacted by politics and changing mandates from different types of political parties and views. But I wanted to highlight an example of this. So in Denver, Colorado, in 2018, a really exciting law was passed that buildings, every new building of this higher than 2,322 square meters large would need to have light covered roofs, and then also would have to have either one of these following items. So they would need to have a green roof or solar panels installed. They needed to have the LEED certificate gold standard completed. They would need to have energy efficiency plans in place, or pay per square foot fee. This was really, really great in itself. And then it was supposed to be accompanied by another supporting package, policy package, which would be a green roof ordinance. But this was not eventually passed due to the difficulties implementing this type of policy. And this difficulty goes way back to what Clara presented and what I mentioned before on the barriers that are commonly faced by nature-based solutions when we're talking about energy efficiency. So just to underscore, for us practitioners, we try to unlock these barriers by creating what I call an enabling environment for energy efficiency and nature-based solutions. So you try to make the environment the soil as fertile as possible, so that these implementations can take place, and so that the work on a policy level can be very solid and very robust. What does this mean in practical terms? I listed 4 main things here on the slide for you. First off, it's very nice that each building can have energy efficiency and nature-based solutions combined, for example, with a green roof or vertical farming infrastructure. But imagine what this could be done, or imagine the results of this on a city level. So having an urban planning strategy to support solutions at scale is much more tangible when we're looking into making cities adaptable for the future, and also when we're supporting mitigation plans. So, for example, Singapore has the Green Building Master Plan that integrates having greenery into these urban developments in the city or in the countryside. And what's very exciting is that if you combine that with your country's NDCs or the National Decarbonization Plan, which is what Costa Rica is doing, or your nationally appropriate mitigation action, your NAMAs, this can have that much more of an impact. So aligning a country's climate ambition with what happens at an urban planning level, that's huge bonus points. Another way to create an enabling environment is to have legislative support. Laws are a very well, it's what Clara was saying. You create this legality. You make things legal in that sense. It's a huge incentive, and I guess it would be a big stick, because you just establish what goes and what is okay for new buildings being developed in growing cities. This is being very much done in several countries and also at a city level. And I have examples from Denver, and I presented Denver, but there's examples from Switzerland and also Cordoba, which is very exciting, because that just means that the laws developed have that much more of an impact and can actually withstand policies that sometimes can be shifting grounds in certain contexts, political contexts. And a huge bonus point would be that these laws, again, align with national laws and regulations, so that laws at the local level mirror very much what's happening at the national level. The third component for me of what creates an enabling environment is to have what Clara was presenting before, very much robust construction standards, building codes that are little by little enhanced over time. They're just not stagnated, but they continue to be enhanced. This is needed, colleagues, because we know that the temperatures that we're seeing now, they're not going to stay like this. If we follow business as usual projections, and of course, even if countries fulfill their NDC pledges and continue to decarbonize, we may still see a temperature rise, especially because cities are becoming warmer due to the urban heat island effect. So it's very important to revisit these codes and continue to enhance energy efficiency patterns. Excuse me. One example for this is South Africa, which I will bring shortly. And as Clara had a very nice map, so we know that a lot of the countries had voluntary building codes and standard adoption. But again, if you've made that mandatory or if at least complied by the public sector in countries and cities, that would have a very, very big impact, positive impact. And then last but certainly not least, having the financial mechanisms to support the early movers on energy efficiency and NBS inside buildings and cities is very crucial. So, lifting the burden in terms of financial costs is huge. And for that, it's of course very relevant for us to include the private sector and extend the private sector very much a seat at the table in these discussions. At UNEP CCC, when we're working with both Mauritius and Zambia, we have a business model lens that we are adopting when looking into nature-based solutions, and also with the connection on energy efficiency, because of course the private sector has a huge role to play. And with that, I will move for some examples now that I've presented what makes the enabling environment. So what I call place specific is that, it's just these buildings in the city. So when you include green roofs, vertical facades, they're mostly the ones that we apply in buildings. You can absolutely support energy efficient measures and decrease greenhouse gas emissions and make the building cooler. In Switzerland, this was done by having a law that was developed, actually was piloted back in the 90s and is still going on. And it's basically mandated that all the cities must have green roofs in new flat roof buildings. This is really, really relevant. We know that Switzerland is not the place that is growing the fastest in terms of energy increase, and also not the one that is heating the fastest in terms of climate change projections, but it's still very relevant because the city is still expanding. So this law has already has had many positive impacts. It has cut off energy by 20% and has also had a huge positive impact on biodiversity, so attracting pollinators and insect species. This is really relevant because we are very much looking into the climate impacts by having an understanding of the biodiversity component, which is also very much at the limits of the planetary boundaries. I have some more examples from South Africa, which again also set high standards for energy efficiency and decarbonizing buildings, things that are happening at the national level, again, very much mirrored at the local level. In Recife, in Brazil, where I'm from, Recife was actually the first city in South America to actually pass a law in 2015, making green roofs mandatory for residential buildings above 4 floors. This is really significant, colleagues, because the city is continuing to grow, and it also expands to what happens at public buildings as well. Cordoba in Argentina is also passing a bylaws requiring buildings to also have green roofs. And in Senegal, there's a climate action roadmap for buildings and constructions, which is quite fresh. It's from last year, which actually connects nature-based solutions with energy efficiency and very much attempts, or it's already benefiting from passive cooling and biosource materials, and also using that opportunity to showcase and enhance the use of solar panels. These, some of the things that I'm referring to are very much part of UNEP CCC's growing literature in the topic of nature-based solutions inside cities, with a focus also on energy efficiency. We have a policy brief that is looking at the barriers, basically mirroring what Clara was referring to before and what I was talking about as well, in this enabling environment and how to unlock the challenges. This is the publication to the left, where you can scan the QR code and be directed to that. And we also have a very much a fresh report looking into how to make nature-based solutions at cities more financially viable for not just the city practitioners, but also the private sector. So this is when we are looking at nature-based solutions with the business model lens. This report is really fantastic, and of course I'm very biased because I got to be involved in it, but it is really a useful resource because several types of building examples are present, and also different types of business models for various types of nature-based solutions infrastructures inside cities, not just on a building level, but also on a large landscape level. So things related to coastal management and protection against floods, etc. So very much a comprehensive source. And next week, we're also launching 2 reports on nature-based solutions, actually for the Zambian context, and another one for the Mauritius context, which I'm not able to link here because it's coming up next week. And I really welcome you to download it in our website when it's ready. I'm grateful for the time to speak about this, and it's hard to limit my presentation to 10 minutes because this is an exciting topic and it's really growing, and I'm looking forward to the discussions. And if you have any questions or comments, you're very much welcome to follow up with me via email, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julia, for this great presentation and for stressing such an important aspect of our sustainability policies, which is the nature-based solution angle to this. I will now hand over to Hubert Zahn and to share his vision and his perspective and experiences from the Ghana perspective. Thank you so much, Hubert, for being with us today. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Clara, and good morning to all listeners. My name is Hubert Zahn. I work with the Ghana Energy Commission as the Assistant Manager in charge of energy efficiency regulations. Ghana, just like any African country, is trying to look at the energy efficiency space. And as Clara rightly mentioned, unlike in Europe, where most of the houses are now being renovated, in Africa, we have the opportunity to start new buildings from the scratch. And so there's a need to pay attention to energy efficiency in building. And that is what exactly the Energy Commission is trying to achieve. Now, having looked at the policy, regulations, incentives, and information policy package, what we have done is to first of all look at the policy or regulatory stage. So Ghana is proud to announce that we have the Ghana Building Code, which has been developed by the Ghana Standards Authority. Now, this building code gives specifics in terms of technical requirements that are needed to meet the energy efficiency in building space. We also have the Ministry of Works and Housing, who have developed the building regulations. And so these building regulations states what the legal requirements are, what the do's and don'ts are, and what are required for various agencies. So there's a schedule in the regulation that allows government agencies to provide a permitting regime for various aspects. And the Energy Commission has been identified as one of the key stakeholders to come up with the energy efficiency guidelines that will regulate that space. So we have taken it upon ourselves to identify key stakeholders. And that is one thing that maybe I would leave with Zambia and Mauritius, that in the space, you need to find out who the key stakeholders are. Otherwise, you have a lot of government agencies working in silos. So what we have done is to take the building code, which has been developed by the Ghana Standards Authority, tease out what is required in terms of energy efficiency, and then set out some minimum requirements for what is to be met as far as energy efficiency is concerned. Now, looking at it, we have various options to use. So first of all, we look at the active measures. Some of the active measures that the Energy Commission decided to work on was on standards and labeling of equipment. We know that equipment are usually installed in these homes, and mostly they increase the energy intensity. So we have come up with standards and labeling for about 19 appliances, which includes most of these household appliances that are contained in the homes, which hitherto would have been consuming a lot. So this is very critical. It goes into looking at LEDs, what kind of requirements is needed for lights, cooling systems, HVAC, refrigerator standards and labeling, air conditioners, washing machines, microwave, and these are all equipments that indeed will be used. Now, moving away from the active measures, we've also looked at the passive measures, and that is where we have taken information from the building code to look at what performance we require for windows, natural ventilation, the design allowing daylight to take advantage, like Julia mentioned, cool roofs or green roofs. All of these are nature-based solutions that we can also incorporate as far as the passive measures are concerned. Now, looking at all these measures that have been put in place, how do we want to go about it? And like we rightly mentioned, we are trying to look at various options available to us, either through a performance-based compliance, and this will be looking at the final energy consumption of the building, and this is ideally for new buildings that are coming up. We also looked at the prescriptive measures where probably we'll set some guidelines to help agencies that are in charge of permitting to be able to respond to. And of course, we have the certification base where already existing certification programs like EDGE can be used to certify some of these buildings. Now, in terms of stakeholder engagement, I would like to say that, again, it's important to identify which agencies you need to collaborate with. In the case of Ghana, we have the Ghana Standards Authority who are mandated to come up with the standards, and exactly so they did with the building codes. We have the Works and Housing who have the building regulation. We have the Energy Commission that is mandated to look at the judicious use of energy resources. So we will be coming up with the energy efficiency aspects of this. Then we have the Environmental Protection Agency who also look at the resources, and perhaps attention could be looked at the building waste. This is another space that has not been looked at, construction waste. And I think that these are things that agencies can take advantage of and look at how collaboratively it can be worked on. The Energy Commission has initiated the process of incorporating energy efficiency in permitting. So we have collaborated with a government agency called the Office of the Head of Local Government Services. This agency is responsible for dealing with the MMDAs, we call them the Metropolitan Municipal and District Assemblies, who are in charge of permitting regime. So we are incorporating the energy efficiency into the permitting guidelines that will allow institutions to make sure that they are incorporating permitting in the whole program. Now, the other aspect is that they have the Works Department, and the Works Department looks at also the site visits. So again, energy efficiency will have to be incorporated in the Works Department manual, which will allow inspectors who will be inspecting the building envelope and taking into consideration some indicators to look at. So in all of this, identifying key stakeholders, institutional collaboration, How do we go about it? I would like to say that you have to identify champions. There needs to be individual champions from these agencies, these countries. So Zambia, Mauritius, it is one thing to come up with the policy documents, but there is another thing if there is no a clear strategy of how to identify your stakeholders and also enforce these policies. So learning from what Ghana is doing, we are taking the bull by the horn, which is to make sure that institutional collaboration is very key. Every agency has a role to play as far as energy efficiency in building is concerned, and there needs to be that clear intention to also harmonize the various activities that have been done as far as energy efficiency is concerned. We have realized that a lot of industries or agencies are working in silos. They are working on individual baseline studies, programs on energy efficiency in buildings. How do we harmonize all of these documents and make sure that something is being represented as a country, which is Ghana? So whole in whole, this is what we are looking at. I would also want to add the integration of renewable energies. That is what we are looking at in terms of introducing green installations. So the Energy Commission is mandated to license the installation of renewable energy products into homes. So there is a licensing regime that allows individuals who practice installation and maintenance of renewable energy to be able to do that for homes. Now, this is because we don't want individuals to have a bad experience with installation of renewables. In addition to that, we have also introduced standards and labeling for the quality and efficiency of solar panels, inverters, and renewable energy batteries. Again, we realize that a lot of substandard products are coming into the market, and so the idea of even promoting renewables into homes will be a bad experience if the products themselves are not of quality or efficient products. So this is what the Energy Commission has done in terms of products on renewable energies, licensing the whole activity of installation and maintenance, and an additional one has to be on what we call renewable energy and then electrical wiring installations. Most of these homes ideally are connected through electricity. And so just like we have done for the installation and maintenance, we have also licensed certified electricians to be able to help in wiring these homes. Ideally, the earthing of these homes will cause some of these homes to consume a lot. And the bills, energy bills that will be paid is indeed also affecting the cost of the homes. So it's important to know that electrical wiring is also important. It helps in also making sure that these homes are of safety. They are not readily available or prone to electrical hazards, which ideally will cause homes to burn off because a lot of these things are done unprofessionally. The last one will be on energy management systems. These energy management systems can also be introduced, and the Energy Commission, through the GIZ, has been able to establish a green building on our premises. And this is one of the exhibitions that we want to lead by example as an institution to make sure that this building that we have has incorporated renewable energy. It also has energy management system. And then also most importantly, the HVAC system that is contained in the building is running on R290 refrigerant, which is a chiller system, which is R290. So you can see that right from the HVAC system to the building envelope itself, to the integration of renewable energy, Energy Commission has been able to cite an example and lead by example so that this building can become an exhibition that indeed will motivate other government agencies to be able to replicate same. The last one I would like to touch on, Clara, is on incentives. And like you rightly mentioned, green public procurement is one of the ways that we want to encourage government agencies to be able to take advantage. We know that government agency is a bulk purchaser of most of these cooling devices and also other products. And so once you set the timelines or criteria for green public procurement, you should be able to take advantage You get economics of scales when you are procuring in bulk as government agencies, and then also you are able to save and make sure that you are getting value for money in terms of your procurement. So these are the measures Ghana has put in place, and I would like to end by encouraging Zambia and Mauritius to make sure that, again, stakeholders are clearly identified. Policy regulations can be replicated. However, there would only be documents that will be left on your shelves if you do not have a clear strategy to enforce them. So a clear effort has to be made on enforcement, and then also you need individual champions. You need to have the passion for what you are doing and make sure that whatever you are doing, it is the bigger picture. It's not about institutions taking the glory. It is about the country making sure that they are reporting on exactly what is being done. So thank you very much for the opportunity and to share what Ghana is doing as far as energy efficiency in building is concerned. I'll be looking forward to the panel discussions where there will be more questions for us to address. So thank you very much, Clara.
Thank you so much, Hubert, for this such comprehensive presentation, but also such a great example you're setting in Ghana. There's so many takeaways from your presentation, but I would just like to highlight the bigger picture, what you just mentioned, making sure that it's not about individual institutions or people taking the glory, but actually trying to work together for the best development of the country and making sure that we're achieving climate targets, that we're achieving the development of our economies as well alongside with all of these efforts. It is an excellent example you're posing, and the best part is you are walking the talk. In your case, you're doing excellent work in the government of Ghana, in particular your team, making sure that not only you set up the regulation, but you also have the information, the awareness raising campaigns. You mapped the key stakeholders, you're talking to them, you continue to make all these efforts 360 throughout all the aspects of not only policy design, but also implementation and enforcement. And I think all of this makes you an excellent example, I think, in the region, and hopefully an example that many others, including Mauritius and Zambia, will follow. So thank you so much, Hubert, for that. I will now move on, I would say, to our next session, the session on the energy efficiency policies and building regulations, both in Zambia and Mauritius. And for that, for this session, we will have the pleasure of hearing from two distinguished speakers, Siyat Tafuni, Senior Engineer at the Energy Efficiency Management Office, EMO in Mauritius, who will share insights from the Mauritian perspective, and also Ernst Zulu, Inspector of Zambia's National Council for Construction, NCC, who will bring the Zambian perspective. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and hand over to Siyat. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Julia, and also Hubert for setting the scene. I introduce myself. I'm Mr. Tifani Ziad. I am an engineer at the Energy Efficiency Management Office. So for today, we'll talk a bit about the energy efficiency policies and the building regulations in Mauritius. Just a bit of the contents that we'll go through today. We'll go through a brief recap of what we said yesterday in terms of electricity demand in Mauritius. Also, what is the EMO? What is the mandate of the EMO? And also our strategic plan in terms of the demand side management. We'll talk about the energy efficiency regulations for energy audits. We'll talk about the regulations for regulated machinery, minimum energy performance standards for air conditioning. We'll talk also about the energy performance contracting, the framework for EPC that we are currently working on, and also the mitigation action facility project. We'll give a brief overview on that project, and finally I'll conclude on the energy efficiency building regulations that is currently being developed by the Ministry of National Infrastructure. So a brief recap of what we said yesterday. As I've mentioned, the two highest consumers of electricity in Mauritius is the domestic and the commercial sector, which can be seen on the graph. As you can see, the growth is exponential for the domestic sector, that is in blue. It keeps on growing since 2010 till 2023. We've not yet get the figures for 2024. and again for the commercial sector. And the commercial sector, it comprises the commercial centers, the hospitals, clinics, schools, universities, all of the commercial sector. So this is the reason as to why there's a need for energy efficiency in building for these two major consuming sectors, the domestic and the commercial sectors. And that is why the EMO comes into play. The EMO was set up in 2011 under the Ministry of Energy and Public Utilities. We've got a mandate and objective to promote efficient energy use in the country and also promote national awareness for the efficient use of energy as a means to reduce CO2 emission and also protect the environment. As I've said yesterday, we've got our NDC 2021, the second enhanced NDC, with a 10% energy efficiency based on our 2019 figures. The first roadmap, the first framework that was set up by the EMO was the energy efficiency demand side management. It is a framework, it is our cahier de charge that we've benchmarked since 2016. It encompasses over 30 measures that should be adopted by the EMO by 2030. It englobes the industry sector, the services sector, the public sector, the transport sector, the household sector. We've got several measures in these different sectors, and we've used that at the EMO as a benchmark, as a framework to move forward with our goal. The first regulation that I will talk about is the energy efficiency, energy consumer and energy audit regulation. It was set up in 2017 and revised in 2021. And who is concerned? It is the large energy consumers, those who consume above, for the public bodies, 15 tons of oil equivalent per year, which is equivalent approximately to 175 megawatt, and the private sector above 100 TOE per year. And they are mandated by law by the Director of the Energy Efficiency Management Office to conduct an energy audit by a registered independent energy auditor. The registered independent energy auditor is registered by the EMO based on the several criteria. And the energy auditor should submit a hard copy and an e-copy of the energy audit to the EMO, which is cross-verified if there is any changes that need to be made, if there is any clarifications. And it should meet the ISO 5002 standards. This is mandated by law, that is, again I repeat, if they exceed these 15 TOE and 100 TOE, they should conduct an energy audit mandated by the EMO. And also, for the large energy consumers, the minimum level is level 2, and where recommended, they should apply a level 3 energy audit. And they should also cover 2 years of energy audit data and the implementation plan for recommended measures. And also the EMO is go back to them and see where matters stand in terms of the recommendation. Have they been able to apply the recommendation? Where is the status in terms of short term, medium term and long term? In terms of progress made, 82 energy audits have been completed, and as I've mentioned yesterday, we've got a target of 240 energy audits by 2030, and 122 large energy consumers has already been notified, and you can see the disparity that some is in the process of energy auditing. And as I've mentioned yesterday, there is energy saving potential from the recommendations of the energy auditors from these large energy consumers. That is our first policy. Secondly, as I've talked for large energy consumers, but what about those who consume less than the 15 TOE and the 100 TOE? That is why we collaborate with other ministries. Firstly, we've got energy audits in 30 cooperative societies as part of a budget measure 2023 and 2024. That is the SME. Even though they consume less than 15 TOE, we provide the support to conduct an energy audit for them, and they can implement the recommendation. Likewise, for the manufacturing sector, even though they consume less than the 15 theory or the 100 theory, we provide a subsidy for the energy audits, and they can conduct the energy audits and implement the recommendations. And in addition, for the government buildings, again, for those who doesn't meet the criteria, which is below the 15 theory, we provide expert services under the expert skills scheme for energy audit in government building. And currently, there is 13 sites that are currently being audited, and we are awaiting for the audit report. So apart from the large energy consumers, we are also working for those who doesn't meet this criteria with other ministries. That is for energy audit. Then in terms of regulated machinery. So why a regulation for the machinery? It is to promote the consumer choice, to inform consumer choices through energy labels. We've got 6 machinery, 6 appliances: the television and monitor, the electric oven, the washer dryer, a dishwasher, and the refrigerator. And since its implementation, we've got these number of models that has been registered by the EMO and is on the market or is no more on the market. And our labeling should be as per the EU Energy Labeling Framework, as per the EU 2017-1369 regulation, that is the energy classes from A to G. Here is an example of energy label that can be seen in Mauritius. Perhaps our students, our policymakers have seen it in the shopping malls. So this is an energy class where you can see from A to G where the consumers can make informed decision, and it is monitored by the EMO and also the Mauritius Standards Bureau. And all these dealers must be registered with the EMO. And now, what about the minimum energy performance standard? As I've said yesterday, we've got a peak demand in February, and also Mauritius has recorded the hottest January ever in January 2025. From this data, 2023 to 2024, this is the graph for the imports of air conditioning. So, as Julia said, in terms of a cooling demand in Portuguese, here you can see in terms of the imports of air conditioners. From 2023 to 2024, there is an increase of 74%, which is huge to the Mauritius context. And its demand to the CEB, we've calculated approximately 30 megawatt. That is why there is a need for MEPS in Mauritius, and the EMO has done the same. Since March 2025, we've gone to the Cabinet of the Ministry, we've approved our minimum energy performance standard, and by September, all the importators, all the dealers will have to abide by the MEPS. And we've worked out this MEPS with the SACRI, the South African Centre for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, under the ILA project. And it is adaptable to the moderate climate, to the Mauritius climate. As you know, high humidity, high temperatures. It is important that we adapt it to our local context. And we've used the cooling seasonal performance factor for the MEPS for air conditioners. In addition, we're also working for new MEPS for refrigerators, for lightings, which will come into play maybe by next year, or 2027 or 2028. That is for the MEPS. And now for the energy performance contracting, we've seen from the energy audits there are huge potential for the recommendation, for applying the recommendation of energy audits. But however, we don't have any framework to follow up, to encourage the implementation. That's why the EPC, energy performance contracting, comes into play. We are working with Deloitte Mauritius to develop this framework, and we expect to build up the ESCO market. As I've mentioned, we've got the energy auditors, we've got approximately 60 energy auditors, we've got energy audit firms in Mauritius, but now we need to set up the ESCO market, and maybe the students following this webinar can learn more about this. We'll do a workshop by the end of the year to sensitize our students, university students, in terms of ESCO potential in Mauritius. So the framework is divided into 4 phases, that is Deloitte and the EMO is working on. We've got the inception phase, development of tools, defining a regulatory environment, and promoting EPC. It's very important in terms of contracting because we've got the public procurement office, we've got the private sector, the public sector. It is important to make sure our framework is well aligned, we've got no problems to set up the ESCO. It is a very important project for the Mauritius context, for the implementation of recommendations of energy audit. So as of now, we are at the inception phase and the development of the tools for EPC. So by the beginning of next year, as I've mentioned, the framework will be completed. Based on this framework, we've got a project with a mitigation action facility. Mauritius has submitted among 200 over and above 200 over projects. We've been selected among 6 projects. So the objective is to establish a guaranteed fund of 15.6 million euros to incentivize commercial banks to finance ESCO-led energy efficiency project through EPC. That's why, as I mentioned, the importance to have a good framework for EPC. So our key partners here is the UNEP CCC, again, as our technical expertise. We are working with the capital asset management that they will be able to fund to see the guaranteed fund, and also the EMO for the implementing agency. So what is the guaranteed fund? It is where the ESCO will tap in and use this fund when they take loan to the commercial banks to implement energy audit recommendations. So based on the EPC framework, they will be able to use this guaranteed fund. And our expected impacts is 95 projects over 5 years, 210 kiloton of CO2 emission, and also contribute to the energy efficiency improvement by 2030. So that's a bit about the mitigation action facility project. Again, the project is in the DPP phase, the detailed preparation phase. We are working with the UNEP and the capital asset management to submit the DPP, and subject to approval by the mitigation action facility, we will get the guaranteed fund. And also, we are also working with the Ministry of National Infrastructure. Mr. Kalichern, the Director of Architecture, will be the panelist later. In terms of defining minimum energy efficiency requirements for buildings, they will establish compliance mechanism where assessors will check when plans are submitted to the local authorities. They will also promote sustainable design, reduce environmental impact, and enhance occupant comfort. This, Mr. Kalichern can elaborate a bit more on that in the discussion panel. Additional policies and guidelines that we've done at the level of the EMO. We already have a guidelines for energy efficiency and energy conservation in the hotel sector, which is available on our website. We also develop a guidelines for the installation and maintenance of ACs, a guidelines for electricity consumption reduction in the public sector. As I've told you yesterday, we've achieved 2% reduction. We are currently working on a framework for the use of heat pump, which we hope to be concluded by the end of this month. Again, for the guidelines for the energy efficiency and energy conservation in the manufacturing sector, which will be concluded by the end of this month. For the commercial sector also, which will be concluded by the end of this month. Again, these documents will be available on the website of the EMO, and it will help users. Again, it is important to note that all these guidelines has been done in collaboration with other stakeholders. It's not just the EMO, we've taken on board stakeholders from the public sector and the private sector to develop these guidelines. And finally, we are working with the UNEP CCC under the GPUC project for a regional roadmap for energy efficiency at Côte d'Or Smart City. So that's a bit about Mauritius. So to conclude, Mauritius is very committed to the energy efficiency with our 10% target and the 240 large energy audits plan, and also the 95 EPC project projected. And maybe to conclude, I'll ask maybe the students following us and also policymakers to go on our website where they can get more information, more detailed information on our Energy Efficiency Acts and the different regulations and legislations available. So I thank you all for your attention and wish you a fruitful webinar ahead, and I hand over to you, Clara.
Thank you so much, Sijat. Do you hear me now? I think we lost connection.
Yes.
Thank you. so much for this very thorough presentation. It is excellent to see the great progress that Mauritius is doing under the great leadership of EMO and see at you and your team in particular. I think it's so comprehensive and so impressive how you have been advancing, particularly in the past 5 years on this topic. I think it's a great example for, as you said, not only the students and policymakers, but any other participant today with us. So thank you so much for sharing these policy instruments and these advancements with us. And moving on now, I would like to introduce you to N. Zulu. He's an inspector in the Zambian's National Council for Construction, and it is a pleasure to have him also to share the policy advancements that have been undertaking in Zambia, particularly in the buildings energy efficiency space. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, N. Zulu. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to give Ernst Zulu just a second for him to put together the presentation. In the meantime, we had a question actually that I would like to share with you. We had a question on how can we relate GIS software with energy efficiency. So I'll take this little slot to very quickly answer to this question before I hand over again to Nzulu. GIS software helps make buildings and cities more efficient by showing us how places use energy and how can we do it better, how can we make a better use of that energy. It maps things like sunlight, wind, and shade to really help design smarter buildings and choose the best spots for solar panels or natural cooling or any other energy efficiency instrument or measure that we would like to implement. It also shows which neighbors use the most energy so we can focus the upgrades where they're needed the most. And it is planners and governments that can use as well GIS to track progress, to plan retrofits and make decisions based on real data. So it's a great tool for sharing clear visual information with communities and getting everyone on board. So without further ado, I see now Mr. Ernst Zulu has his presentation up and I will hand over to him.
Thank you. Right, good morning once again to everyone joining the webinar. My name is Ernest Zulu and I'm Regional Manager from the Inspectorate Department at the National Council for Construction. And I will this morning be looking at the policy and regulatory framework that is supporting energy efficiency in Zambia and the strides that we're making with the drive to achieving energy efficient buildings. So in terms of presentation outline, I will briefly look at the situation analysis and I will look at the generation capacity that we have currently within Zambia and probably build the case for energy efficient buildings within the context of Zambia. Then we'll look at the regulatory framework that is currently in existence and the institutional arrangements that are governing the topic of energy efficiency, and also look at where we are in terms of development of the energy efficiency building codes that support the drive for energy efficiency. Then I will delve into the challenges that are currently being faced in this area, as well as look at what opportunities exist for scaling energy efficiency, and then I will conclude. So in terms of situation analysis, the population for the country stands at around 19.6 million, and this is poised to increase to around 26.9 million by 2035. You may also wish to know that Zambia is one of the most urbanized countries within sub-Saharan Africa, and urbanization is growing at a very increased rate. So that creates a lot of demand for buildings that are energy efficient and buildings that respond to climate change. Currently, the country is facing an acute energy crisis, and this is as a result of the drought that we've been currently, or rather experiencing for the last few years. And this has resulted in major reservoirs being depleted. And you may wish to know that Zambia is predominantly hydro-based in terms of electricity generation. And as you see on my next slide, that generation represents around 83%. So the current situation in terms of crisis for electrical energy has resulted in long hours of power blackouts, which is a phenomenon known as load shedding. So in terms of electricity generation, as I was saying, the generation capacity is highly dominated by the hydro power generating capacity that the country has. And this represents around 83%. And you see that the country is now currently in a rush to actually increase the energy mix by introducing renewables into the mix. On your right there, you see a photo of the Kariba Dam, which at one point was one of the largest dams in the world. And this dam has been undergoing repairs on the dam wall, which sort of exacerbated the challenge on the generation side of things. Moving on, you will note that historically Zambia has also had very low electricity tariffs, some of the lowest in sub-Saharan Africa, in fact. And over the years, we've been trying to move to cost-reflective tariffs. And in 2023, the Energy Regulation Board actually approved a 37% jump in the tariffs. And this was awarded to the utility company, ZESCO. And they've entered into a multi-year tariff adjustment plan of up to 2027. And you see there the trends that electricity pricing will always keep going up. So this creates or builds a case for consumers to have energy efficient buildings, and people are becoming more and more aware of their electricity costs and bills, and thereby the drive to try and reduce these. Then, as you see there from the Energy Regulation Board Bulletin of 2018, you see that the domestic sector, which comprises of the residential building sector, as well as the commercial sector, represents about 34% in terms of total energy consumption, only second to mining, which is around 51%. And so there is a big opportunity in the domestic sector to actually reduce energy consumption by employing energy efficient measures on the buildings. So in terms of now the regulatory framework that governs, the energy side of things as well as buildings, we do have the National Energy Policy. This is by the Ministry of Energy, and this recognizes the various energy efficiency initiatives that need to be employed in able to scale energy efficiency measures across sectors. And one of the areas that has been identified in the policy is building codes on minimum energy performance as well as energy efficiency that need to be developed. Then you also have the energy efficiency strategy and action plan. This was developed in 2022. And the strategic objective in this strategy is to develop and establish a regulatory framework that supports energy efficiency. And it also drives to promote best practices in the industry by utilizing energy efficiency benchmarks that can be adopted and utilized within the Zambian context. There is also a drive towards awareness and capacity building programs for institutions, experts, and the general public at large. And the strategy also promotes the coordination or coordinated collaboration between stakeholders and all the actors that are involved in the energy efficient measures to drive economic growth. Moving on, when it comes to the construction sector itself, we have the National Infrastructure Policy. This was developed in 2023, following the draft construction industry policy from the early 90s that perhaps needed to be overhauled over time. So the National Infrastructure Policy recognizes the negative effects of climate change and the impacts that it has on infrastructure, and therefore also promotes the green and energy efficient infrastructure going forward, and emphasizes the need for climate resilience in infrastructure development. The National Council for Construction Act number 10 of 2020, where I come from, has provisions within its act which also can be leveraged on when it comes to promoting the drive for energy efficiency. And one of these is under Section 32 that looks at the best practice project assessment scheme, which is a big opportunity for driving energy efficiency, because best practice project assessment scheme is meant to actually look at projects that conform to best practices, including energy efficiency measures and green building and other parameters that could be adopted to actually drive the agenda for energy efficiency. So within that act, we also have Section 41 that promotes projects to conform to minimum technical standards, policies, and regulations that relate to the construction industry and the environment as a whole. And these are all big opportunities that can be utilized in order to enshrine energy efficiency into the Zambian construction industry. We also had, we have the Urban and Regional Planning Act of 2015 that establishes local authorities as local planning authorities within their areas of jurisdiction. Now, the Urban and Regional Planning Act was developed or amended following the repeal of the Town and Country Planning Act. So it also empowers local authorities to develop or control development within their areas of jurisdiction, including buildings that are developed within their areas of jurisdiction. But it's also important to mention here that the Urban and Regional Planning Act is a mandate of the Ministry of Local Government. And the Ministry of Local Government used to be called the Ministry of Local Government and Housing. So it had the component of housing, which meant that the housing stock or anything to do with housing fell under that ministry. However, there was some realignment in the last few years where the housing component was then taken to our parent ministry, which is the Ministry of Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development. So that sector, housing sector, has been moved. So there's need to have that constant collaboration between the two ministries, and therefore this is how we still refer to the Urban and Regional Planning Act of 2015 as one of the key pieces of legislation in order to control development. Then we also have the Sustainable Housing Guidelines of 2016. These are guidelines that are quite comprehensive and promote housing that addresses the effects of climate change and promote sustainable development priorities for the country. Moving on, looking at the institutional arrangements, you can see there that there is quite a number of actors within the energy efficiency space in buildings. You have the top ones being the ministries themselves, our ministry, which is Ministry of Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development. And then you have the Ministry of Local Government, which I just alluded to in terms of their component when it comes to development control. And then you have the Ministry of Energy, which actually drives the energy policy and agenda for the country. And then beneath that, you have regulatory institutions like the National Council for Construction, ourselves, and then you also have the Zambia Bureau of Standards that sets standards for minimum energy performance, for energy standards and things like that in buildings. Then you also have the National Housing Authority, which is an agency under the Ministry of Infrastructure and Housing Development, which looks at institutional housing as well as housing development within the country to try and close the housing deficit. Then you have local authorities, which fall under the Ministry of Local Government. And then you have professional bodies such as the Zambia Institute of Architects and Engineering Institution of Zambia, which now have the professionals that are involved in the design and supervision and implementation of these projects, building projects. And as designers, as supervisors, they drive the agenda in terms of ensuring that the buildings that are put up conform to energy efficiency measures and the like. So in terms of where we are when it comes to the development of energy efficiency building codes, as the National Council for Construction, through the Ministry of Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, we are taking the lead in terms of the development of the Zambia, of the National Building Code. You may wish to note that the current building regulations are sort of scattered, and they are quite old, from the 1960s before independence. And so the task at hand is to actually come up with a national building code, which will include a component of energy efficiency and other building regulations to sort of now drive the agenda for the coming years in terms of Zambia's position on energy efficiency. And so far, in terms of progress, there've been a number of meetings being held between the ministry itself and NCC, and a roadmap has since been developed for the development of these building codes and regulations. And we also have been planning stakeholder consultative meetings because you know that this is a national issue, and therefore there is need for consultative meetings among all the key stakeholders and actors. There is also the need to establish expert subcommittees on various topics of the National Building Code, including energy efficiency. And also we are collaborating with the support of cooperating partners like the World Bank, the European Union and UNEP on the drive for energy efficiency within the country. So what are some of the challenges that we are currently facing in trying to increase or upscale the uptake of energy efficiency in Zambia? Number one, I think the absence of the National Building Code that I've just been talking to is paramount in trying to drive the agenda for energy efficiency to be embedded in the construction industry in Zambia. The developing of the codes itself can be a lengthy task as well as a costly task, and therefore resources may be limiting to drive this agenda. The overlaps in addressing energy efficiency, you will note that even when I was looking at the institutional arrangements and the regulatory framework itself, the issues are cross-cutting. So you have the Ministry of Energy, which has agencies under it as well. You have the Energy Regulation Board, you have ZESCO, which is the utility company, and then you have the construction side, the building side, you have our parent ministry, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Urban and Housing and Urban Development, and then you have the National Council for Construction, you have the National Housing Authority, you have the professional bodies. So you see that there are a lot of cross-cutting issues, and therefore we need to come together and sort of consolidate the whole agenda and move in one direction. So there may be fragmentation in terms of implementation of programs, and some of them may not even be captured because of the nature of the topic, because it cross-cuts across various sectors, including the building sector. And moving on, the current domesticated standards are voluntary. So by this, I mean that under the Zambia Bureau of Standards, which is the authority when it comes to standards development, there are a number of standards that have been developed so far or domesticated from international standards. And the unfortunate part is that some of these standards may not be mandatory, so they become voluntary, and therefore their use is limited. Zambia currently has not adopted an official rating or certification system Of course, yesterday we heard from Edge. Edge is becoming more and more commonly used on certain projects. We have some LEED certified projects, a few LEED certified projects, but we do not have a specific certification system that has been adopted for the country, even though we utilize other forms or other certification or rating systems that exist out there. I know that, for example, South Africa is big on Green Star South Africa. Kenya recently adopted Green Star Kenya. So we wait to see which direction we will take, or we will leave it open as long as it has, an internationally acceptable rating system. Then the lack of research and development in the use of local materials is also a big challenge. There is a big drive to utilize local materials when it comes to energy efficiency. However, research and development can be a costly exercise, and therefore we are not probably doing enough in terms of research and development. And perhaps this is another opportunity that we can look at to utilize local materials in terms of the building envelope and the like. Then the high cost of materials itself. Zambia is a landlocked country, although now we've turned to addressing it as a land-linked country. However, the positioning of the country, increases import-based materials costs. So because they have to run through borders, we do not have direct access to the sea. So most of these interventions become quite expensive when they land in the country. And then the costly retrofits to existing buildings. You will note that some buildings do not, or their energy performance is quite poor, and so they may need to be retrofitted. And the retrofitting components can be quite expensive. And then we also have institutional capacity challenges in terms of resources, manpower, and the like. And therefore, that also hinders the uptake of energy efficiency in the construction sector. Then we do not have a Green Building Council, although I do recognize that we do have a Green Building Association, which was formed a couple of years ago. However, this is a voluntary association and it's not legislated, so it poses a challenge when it comes to driving the energy efficiency agenda or championing the agenda for energy efficiency. Like other countries, you would see they have green building councils, and these also are affiliates of the World Green Building Council. So the development of a national or a green building council, a national building council, becomes key in trying to champion this agenda. Then the inadequate sensitization on energy efficiency possibilities, both at professional level as well as the general public at large, remains a challenge. I think we perhaps need to do more in this area where we sensitize professionals on the requirements, on needs, and possibilities that exist in terms of energy efficiency measures. I'll move on to look at the opportunities that exist. Currently, we are leveraging on projects such as the Zambia Energy Efficiency and Sustainability and Sustainable Transformation Program, short form ZEST. And this is a project that is supported by the European Union and has been running from 2023 and ends in 2026, which is next year. The overall objective of this project is to make energy efficiency count in Zambia. And some of the activities under the project include the construction of an energy efficient demo house, which is supposed to be done by NCC. So this is work in progress. And then we have, of course, the building codes that we've been alluding to. So we are yet or are in the process of formulating building codes and guidelines in energy efficiency. The project also supported the establishment of the Energy Efficiency Advisory Unit, which has been set up at the National Council for Construction. And so the advisory unit initially or essentially has to provide knowledge or skills and support the public and act as a point of contact and information sharing on energy efficiency matters within the construction industry. It's a new setup, and so of course there could be a bit of teething problems. However, the intention is that once fully fledged, it would be able to carry energy audits for those that require energy audits, as well as provide a point for information and consultation from practitioners and the general public on matters to deal with energy efficiency in buildings. Then energy audits in public buildings. The project, under the project, there is a program to actually do energy audits on public buildings and come up with some sort of baseline, and also propose energy efficiency measures and retrofits to be included in those buildings. Then there is also the green procurement workshops, which the institution is supposed to be undertaking to sensitize procuring entities on the need for green procurement, and I think this has been alluded to in the earlier presentations today. So going forward, the hope is that procuring entities, as they roll out public infrastructure projects, will ensure that energy efficiency and other green building measures are incorporated in these projects. Then there is also a rollout of training on energy efficiency. So the NCC has what is called the National Construction School. So under the National Construction School, we will be rolling out training in energy efficiency and of course certifying players within the construction industry that execute these projects. So this is another opportunity that lies ahead. Then under other institutions such as the utility company, which is ZESCO, there is a program they have just, I think they're still within the program of retrofitting 800,000 fluorescent tubes in public institutions with LED tube lighting. And this is being done in hospitals, schools, and other public buildings. And by this program alone, they're hoping to save around 47.7 megawatts. The other program under the utility company is the power factor correction on SMEs, mainly those in block making and milling plants and other SME entities, where 300 capacitor banks were procured under this project, and this has resulted in a saving of about 8.5 megawatts, which in other words, or otherwise would have been lost through reactive power. Under the Ministry of Energy, there is the development of what they're calling National Energy Efficiency Guidelines, but these are more general guidelines to just create awareness to the general public on some measures that can be employed to increase energy efficiency in their homes, in their businesses, and other sectors of the economy. Moving on, still on opportunities, the establishment of a Green Building Council would definitely help in championing the agenda for green buildings, and leveraging, of course, on the projects that I've just alluded to, the ZEST project, and also the UNEP pilot project between Zambia and Mauritius, are definitely a great opportunity for the country to move towards energy efficiency or mainstreaming energy efficiency in the building sector. Then other initiatives such as tax rebates on renewables such as solar PVs, inverters, and batteries that the government has put in place. Currently, there is no VAT that is applied on importation of these technologies, which also reduces the costs in a way. Then the programs such as the net metering program, the regulations have just been developed. So customers now are able to apply to the utility company, the electricity utility company, to feed into the grid. And so that also is a good initiative in the right direction. Then there was recently also a presidential decree to have all government buildings installed with solar PV on their rooftops. And as I speak, I think the Ministry of Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development has already taken the lead and installed or lined their rooftop with solar PV. So in concluding, the current energy crisis has provided an opportunity for Zambia to mainstream energy efficiency within the building subsector. And as a country, as we move forward and move towards cost reflectiveness in the electricity tariffs, that creates also a growing demand for energy efficient buildings by consumers and developers and the general public at large. So there is a great drive to have energy efficient buildings, and people are now more cautious of their electricity usage. This drive is also being supported by strengthening the legal framework and of course providing the supporting energy efficiency building codes and guidelines and policy in general, as has been alluded to earlier. So in terms of strengthening and streamlining institutional arrangements, the government structures will, or it is hoped that these will enhance energy efficiency measures, and also by building capacity of energy efficiency practitioners, professionals, experts at different levels, installers and the like at large, will obviously increase the uptake of energy efficiency on the projects. And increasing the sensitization on the need to promote energy efficient buildings in the wake of climate change is certainly required within the Zambian context. I thank you for now, and Clara, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ernest Zulu, for this great presentation. I think it's been extremely, I see all the claps and all the reactions from our audience really indicating how great it has been. It's been extremely comprehensive. I think we have hopefully a very good overview of what is happening now in Zambia in terms of buildings energy efficiency policy. So thank you very much for that, Ernst, and we hope, as agreed from UNEP CCC, to continue to support you in the development of the building codes, including energy efficiency aspects, as you mentioned. So that is also a great development that we hope to continue to be involved in. Now, with this great presentation that we have seen from Mr. Zulu, we wrap up session 2 and we move on now to the panel discussion. So I would like to welcome, please Ernst, keep your camera. If you don't mind, I would like to welcome also with the cameras Hubert Zahn, Ziad, Ransnath Kalichurn from IMO as well as our guest speakers for this panel discussion. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I want to very quickly present, you already know Hubert Zahn, a Senior Enforcement Officer, Government of Ghana. You have heard from Ernst Zulu, Inspector in the Zambian's National Council for Construction, NCZ in Zambia, but I'm yet to present Mr. Ransnath Kalichurn, Director of Architecture in the Ministry of National Infrastructure and Community Development in Mauritius. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sir, it is a pleasure and an honor to have you. And without further ado, because we're running a bit late according to our schedule, I would like to start with some questions that are related to how are things evolving in your country and how could we work together to engage all relevant stakeholders in this very challenging but yet very rewarding process of developing and implementing energy efficiency building policies. So starting with you, Sir Rajan Radnas.
Yes,
Could you share how is your institution contributing to sustainable and energy efficient construction in
So
your country?
thank you. Let me just give you a brief overview of what we are implementing in this financial year in Mauritius. So it is going to be the energy efficiency building regulations, which I will just give us a very brief overview of how it is, because I'm not allowed to share all the details right now. So it's the performance based. It's a hybrid system. It's performance based and prescriptive. So these are the two things that are main components, and its application is going to be with through the BLUP, which is the Building and Land Use Permit in Mauritius, which is under the aegis of the Economic Development Board, the EDB. So if you want, you can go to its website and you can find all the details there. Now, for the EEBR, the Energy Efficient Building Regulations, has provision for inspectors and inspections by assessors. And these inspections are effected at two stages. First is the inspection at roof works and North Hall, which are critical for Mauritius and for our region. Now, after that, those inspections are effected, the energy performance certificate is issued, EPC. So the backbone of the EBR, of course, is the OTTV. If you are familiar with overall thermal transfer value calculations for building envelope performance, and of course the inspections, the EPC. Now, where we are now at this stage, so we have already submitted a draft EBR to government institutions in Mauritius, but that's the first stage. So this approval has already been obtained. The second stage is approval by the cabinet of the ministry, of the government, sorry. And once we have the, before we can go to the cabinet approval, we'll have to have stakeholder consultation. So the stakeholder consultation, it consists of all the players in the field, the architects associations and the EMO and all the actors. Now, after that, we are going to go for cabinet approval. It's going to be in December. Then implementation is scheduled early 2026. So this is for the energy efficiency building regulations, and its implementation is going to be under the CIA. It's the Construction Industry Authority. Now, what are the challenges that we have? I mean, when we were, it was a consultancy, of course, that had worked on the formulation of the EBR. Two things that we did include is air tightness, which in our view is something which can affect performance of energy efficiency, but given its very complicated nature in implementation in a small country, so we removed that, and also thermal bridging, which has not been included. But of course, once the capacity building picks up and people understand how to implement the EBR, it's going to be included in next phases. So this is what we think should be done, in order not to make it too overcomplicated and overly difficult. You know how regulations are. So this is mostly what we are working on for the time being in the field of energy efficiency. Of course, Ziad has already given you an overview of the EMO. So these are the two prongs of the energy efficiency. So I think I've been very brief. Thank you. So if there are any questions related to that, I can, of course, elaborate.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for this overview, Mr. Riyadnath. I think that was really a good starting point to better understand what is really happening in the sustainability and energy efficiency construction space in Mauritius. Thank you very much. I will now move on to the main challenges, as well as promising initiatives or pilot projects that have been delivering results in your context. I would like to now move on to Ernst and Hubert. If you could respectively share what are the some of the challenges I believe you already shared, Ernst, but then maybe focus on what would be the most promising initiative or pilot project that has been delivering real results in the Zambian context. And once we have the perspective from you, I'll hand over to Hubert for the Ghana context.
Yes, thank you. And I think that the project that I showcased, which is the Zambia Energy Efficiency and Transformation Program, has demonstrated so far that it is possible to actually mainstream energy efficiency in the Zambian building context. Under the program, I showcased how just retrofitting fluorescent lighting with LED lighting was able to achieve enormous gains. And this is just on the appliance or lighting side. Now, imagine what looking at the building envelope is able to achieve, including the appliance, and we're talking about minimum energy performance standards, which is also a work in progress under the ministry. We have a SADC region, which is the Southern African Development Community economic grouping. And fortunately for us, under that grouping, we already have minimum energy performance standards for the region. And so our efforts are basically tapping into that and maybe just domesticating what has already been developed. So once the appliances have been rated and minimum energy performance standards that have been developed and coupled with, of course, I could also mention that the use of incandescent lighting was banned a couple of years ago. And so that was a major saving in terms of energy. So some of these little steps have, I think, transformed the building sector into what it is today. And of course, we do realize that there is even a bigger scope to actually achieve savings and mainstream energy efficiency. So for now, I think I could cite those few examples. And of course, as UNEP, I believe you are doing a number of other pilot projects with the ministry, the energy efficiency in public buildings. So coupled with all the efforts, and this is why I was saying, if we could just consolidate all our efforts in the various or respective institutions that we are doing, I think, and also we could document what is being done, then we'll find that we're actually achieving even more. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, Ernest. And indeed there are many different efforts happening in Zambia, and UNEP CCC. We are working with the Ministry of Infrastructure to really support some of the efforts that are being undertaken in the Zambian context. And you're absolutely right that it's critical also to make sure that all these different efforts are also consolidated and are leveraging on the synergies that these efforts bring. So thank you very much for this overview. I see Hubert now is back. May I also share this question with you? Could you share one promising initiative or pilot project that is actually delivering real results in Ghana?
Yes, Clara. Yes, thank you very much. One of the key things that I would want to touch on is on the issue about the equipment that are usually installed in these homes. You know, predominantly ECOWAS region or West Africa has been at the dumping side of used inefficient appliances and also new inefficient ones, obsolete appliances. So what that means is that even if you have the best of regulations or strategies in place for the buildings, the kind of equipment that are used in these buildings are obsolete and high consuming, appliances. And these usually will increase the energy intensity, especially of these buildings. So what we focused on was to come up with the MEPS, minimum energy performance standards, and standards and regulations for electrical appliances. And like I mentioned, we have done that for 19 appliances, just to make sure that we are stopping the dumping of these inefficient appliances into the market. Now, these equipments will be installed in the home. So if they are efficient, then what that translates into is that these appliances will consume less and then the bills will for the individuals in the homes. Now, the broader picture is in Ghana, a lot of the new buildings are coming up. We do not have a situation where we are retrofitting quite a number of buildings. So we have made provisions to come up with the EPC that will also look at existing buildings. And also, like I mentioned, the permitting regime that would look at new buildings that are coming up. So these are the strategies, and coming up with the standards and labeling for the equipment alone was very significant, especially the cooling devices. We know air conditioners have a bigger energy consumption when it comes to homes, and making sure that we set that average consumption and efficiency levels has reduced the consumption in these various homes as well. In terms of the challenges, institutional collaboration, and I keep on emphasizing this because, again, Clara, it is
Absolutely, Hubert. Very much agreed. And collaboration is definitely the key to any progress in any kind of policy implementation. I don't know if you hear us. I will now, just because we're just over
yeah, that's fine.
the time
Yes,
for
exactly. So I guess you rounded it up.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
So institutional collaboration is what I would like to emphasize on, and then individual champions.
Absolutely. Making sure that
to harmonize these government agencies to work together.
Yes, champions to make sure that all these different government agencies work together. Absolutely. I could not agree more. Could we then, because we're a bit over time now, so shall we wrap up this panel discussion with a final question for each of the panelists? This time I would like to get a 1-minute pitch from each of you on looking ahead. Let's look ahead, be optimistic, and say what are the key actions or support that would most help accelerate progress in energy efficiency, also nature-based solutions, any sustainability related to buildings in your specific context. What are the future opportunities and potential for international collaboration as well as national collaboration? I'll hand over to Ernest Zulu to start the answer. Just one thought, 1-minute pitch.
Right. So for me, I think the situation that we are currently facing is the biggest opportunity. We had quite significant amount of power wiped out of the system owing to climate change and the drought that I alluded to. So for me, that in itself is the best opportunity for adopting energy efficiency. The support, obviously, that is required is, like I said, the development of the codes and the guidelines, but also technical support in research and development, as well as support when it comes to the development of the industry and the sector by, obviously, technical assistance from cooperating partners, as is always appreciated. Countries that have experience in these technologies, I know about Passive House in Germany. That's almost like the gold standard when it comes to energy efficiency. And I'm glad to hear that my colleague from Mauritius, they're looking at air tightness and such provisions within their regulations. So regulation, support, technical assistance, I think that will be key in us moving to the next level. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ernest. And from UNEP CCC, we'll be delighted to support you from a technical perspective in the development of the building code. So that's a perfect match. Thank you so much for this synthesis. I'll hand over now to Rajan Kolicham to give the Mauritius perspective.
I'm going to be very brief. I think capacity building has already been taken up, discussed already. So for small and developing states, I think the major challenge is going to be supply chain management, which we have major issues. And small market visibility also is something that is very important. Small markets have difficulties obtaining the latest tech and everything which is related to energy efficiency because they are always latest tech. This is the issue. And it is always very expensive on the market. And the small market, they don't have that kind of access to. I think this this has to be addressed in a way or the other. Of course, through technical support from you and the rest of our partners, maybe South cooperation, maybe this could work. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm very glad to be with you.
Thank you so much for this synthesis. Thank you so much. It is an honor to have your experience and to learn as much from it as possible. Last but not least, let me hand over to Hubert for the Ghana perspective.
Yes, so thank you very much, Clara. I think in the case of Ghana, we have already developed the regulations, we have the building codes, and then we have some measures in place. What we need to look at now is how do we scale up the scope? How do we help in institutional collaboration? So capacity building is one of the things. We have identified key stakeholders, but the mandates are very thin, and we need to make a conscious effort to work together, even though there are 10 mandates, to make sure that we are working for the country. So we need assistance in terms of capacity building and also ensuring that the various agencies are collaborating together. The other part is finance, which is to create more awareness. In our case, we have these regulations in place, but it needs to get to the various people who deserve to have it. We don't believe that enforcing energy efficiency in buildings should just end at the capital, which is in Accra. You know, what happens to somebody who is in the north of the country who is also putting up buildings? So we want to go to this, including the district assemblies, to create the awareness to the various agencies who are involved in permitting and then building inspections and constructions. The last one will be the incentives, you know, and also as Rajnath rightly mentioned, sub-Saharan collaborations or cooperations. It is best when you learn from each other, you know, because Africa, we seem to have a unique situation. You know, as I said, in Europe, you are doing a lot of retrofitting. Africa, we have the chance to put up new buildings. So why don't we learn from the mistakes and improve from it from now? So these are the angles which we would be considering and looking for support in terms of the way forward. So thank you very much for the opportunity once again. Nice to meet my fellow panelists.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Hubert. It's a pleasure to have you as well. And thank you now to all these excellent panelists that we had today. I think with these great notes, we can close the panel and we can close the session as well and the e-training day. It's been an absolute pleasure to have all the panelists, all the great insights and perspectives. As Hubert, Ratan and Ernest were saying, it is so important to learn from each other, especially when there's some context and some perspectives that might be similar and that might be useful for each other, especially when it comes to policy. It's really important to learn from each other. So hopefully this session helped to bring knowledge together and to bring awareness as well. We spoke a lot about awareness and take this information to move forward and really focus on action and implementation to get all these actions going. And with this, one last item for the agenda would be to, as it is a training after all, we don't want to bore you with extensive, difficult quizzes, but we would like and encourage you to take a very easy quiz that we have prepared for you, condensing both the content that we have covered today, but also some of the content that was covered yesterday. So please have a look at the chat. My colleagues have shared a link to forms where you will have access to 5 very straightforward questions that we would like you to fill in as a final quiz and a final item for this e-training session today. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your attention. Thank you for your interest. We had so many questions, so many interventions, so many claps to so many of the information that was being shared. Thank you once again to our panelists, to our speakers today. And also thank you to the technical team that is here in Copenhagen helping Alice and Trupti in the back office, making sure that we can proceed as smoothly as possible from a technical point of view. So thank you once again and looking forward to the last day of our training tomorrow. Thank you.